Welcome to the Super Subs with
Andrew.
and Harry, where we talk about anything and everything related to football. Andrew and I are very pleased to bring the final edition of the 2022 edition of our World Cup podcasts. We've had 2 parts so far, doing an overview on how the World Cup is so far. And this pod episode, it's episode 9 of our pod, the Super Subs. This episode is called How Was the 2022 World Cup? So we're doing a final episode recapping the whole World Cup, what the end results were, what the final 2 stages of the World Cup looked like. Before we get into that though, Andrew, what are you drinking? How is your week so far? Give me the info.
Week's been good, Harry. I feel like even though I feel like I'm pretty prepared for the holidays, I still feel like there's a lot to do. So yeah, just trying to wrap up all that. But as far as what I'm drinking, we've got some mint tea in my Encinitas surfboard cup. Shout out Encinitas, one of my favorite cities down south in California. I went surfing earlier with a good buddy of mine and still feel like I'm warming up a little bit. The water temperature here in Northern California is a bit chilly.
Where do you go surfing? What's your go-to spot?
I've got a couple spots that I love in Santa Cruz out on the coast. So, yeah, anything in that area, that's not too big and, kind of mellow is up my speed.
You'll have to take me sometime.
My jam.
Yeah, I'm pretty okay at surfing. I've only had one ever surf session, and that was baby waves out in Kauai, and the waves were literally like this. So
that's perfect.
So next time I go surfing, I'll have to up the ante a little bit.
You will. How about you? What are you drinking, my friend?
Let's see. So I'm doing a repeat. I'm doing the mango passion fruit mochi donut sour ale. I know that's a mouthful. This is from Seven Stills. This is a repeat brewery that I've talked about on the podcast before. They are now physically defunct. Their locations have shut down, but I believe they're selling out their stock online of their whiskeys. And they are a whiskey and beer distillery and brewery. And this is actually a collaboration with a local East Bay area. So Andrew and I are from the Bay Area here in California. And Third Culture, if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, is a local bakery or an Asian-inspired bakery. They make a lot of mochi-based goods, and mochi, for those of you that may not have had anything mochi, and I hope if you have never had anything mochi, please go out there and ask someone where the nearest mochi is, and please try some mochi. But this is a mango passion fruit mochi donut inspired sour, and they actually throw the mochi donuts directly into the mix. I saw the photos on Instagram, which was insane.
That's incredible. Yeah. That sounds like a dessert in a can.
No, it's delicious. I love sour ale, so this is definitely one up my alley. But cheers, Andrew. Cheers.
Cheers.
And for those
to a successful World Cup.
Exactly, to a successful World Cup. And for those of you that are just joining us, by the way, this is our last podcast of the year, actually, for 2022. You will be seeing us in the new year. We're actually going to be taking a 3-week hiatus, a little well-deserved break after this, and then we'll continue after that. So cheers to that and to the World Cup as well.
Cheers.
All right. So let's get into it, Andrew. We had what I would say was probably one of the most memorable World Cups in recent years. I know World Cups happen every 4 years, and for those tuning in new to the sport of football, a World Cup is not every year. Unlike the Super Bowl or World Series or anything like that, this happens every 4 years. So it's that much more prestigious. You have 4 years leading up to a World Cup as a player, and you have all this tension building up and expectation, and you have to be in form. And we talked about form a little bit in our previous pods. But this World Cup delivered on a lot of levels, right, Andrew? It delivered on entertainment.
It was incredible.
Delivered on just the teams and the underdog mentality that we saw across the board. We saw some incredible players that we didn't know about before now come out of the woodwork. And we saw just all kinds of events and things to cheer about happen. Andrew, what are your thoughts on the World Cup in general from the start to finish? How would you summarize what you thought about the World Cup?
The World Cup was incredible, but first off, I think I need to give credit where credit is due. Harry, you accurately predicted the winner of the 2022 World Cup. My Brazil prediction fell flat on its face, and Argentina and Leo Messi gained glory.
Oh my goodness!
So hats off,
Thank
off.
you.
That was quite a pick. Thoughts overall. Oh my gosh, it's hard to summarize what we just saw. I mean, it felt like such a fast World Cup, but also such a long World Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of any World Cup, and I'm not even that old, in recent history that was so entertaining from start to finish, right? So group stages, there were so many groups that came down to the last day of matches to determine which teams were going to go through to the knockout round. And that was absolutely incredible. We saw some amazing upsets. Some real kind of Cinderella stories almost, like Morocco getting to the semifinals, which was the furthest that any African nation and any Arab nation have ever made it in the World Cup. So hats off to them. They were absolutely incredible. And they should be nothing but proud of their performance. Saw a lot of teams fall flat. I don't know. I mean, I hate to call them out, but Brazil, who I predicted to win, they just didn't deliver. Yeah. They fell apart. Yeah. They were such a talented team, and they still are. And I think we've got great things ahead for them. Germany was a big disappointment. Belgium was a disappointment. England, unfortunately, was a disappointment. I think, we could talk about it later maybe, but, the Harry Kane penalty kick that he sent over the bar against his Tottenham Hotspur teammate, Hugo Lloris, that was pretty devastating for a lot of Premier League fans and English fans for sure.
Yep.
But I mean, overall, it was pure entertainment. It was amazing to see the world unite behind a sport. Obviously, a lot of questionable and, horrible circumstances around the World Cup and working conditions and the buildup. And don't want to gloss over that. But as far as the sport goes and the play, it was incredible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm actually trying to pull up how many people watch the World Cup final. It's always a record-breaking number every single year. And before I say the number, Andrew, our viewers and listeners you listening to the podcast can pull this up on your own and see how many people actually watch the World Cup. But Andrew, while we're here live doing this together, how many people around the world officially, there's unofficial numbers of people that watch over the shoulder and things like that. Sure. But how many people do you think watch the World Cup live across the world? Just counted viewers, official viewers on screens.
Yeah. 4 billion.
4 billion. That's probably right. There were 26 million TVs on at the same time.
26 million.
So if you think about that and how many people are in one room, so the bar that I was watching a lot of these games in had about 60, 70, 80 people in that bar. So if you multiply that by the number of official viewers there were, it was just an incredible turnout. And I'm sure the number of people estimated to watch the World Cup is above or close to the number that you probably said, Andrew. So this was definitely a very popular, it is a very popular game every single 4 years. I would agree with you, Andrew. It delivered on every single aspect. I would say one thing continuously that we definitely want to call out is Qatar received the World Cup in questionable circumstances. There are definitely human rights violations that we want to highlight that you should definitely not forget about and you should be aware about. But the World Cup itself, in terms of entertainment, in terms of just countries representing themselves and uniting a nation under one flag or under one team, we've seen just so much of that. And I would go as far to say this World Cup and the final specifically is probably one of the best we've seen over the past 20 years, just in terms of just pure entertainment and the, like you said, Andrew, the amount of upsets and just how close all the groups were. So I would say it was a great World Cup. It probably helps that we were keeping a close track and close eye on this World Cup versus maybe some of the other World Cups where we weren't as invested. And this year, I would say we were definitely very, very invested. So let's go on. Last overview of the 2022 World Cup that we did, Andrew, we talked all the way up until right before the quarterfinals. So we talked about the group stages and the knockout stage, and we talked about the teams there. And now we've seen the quarterfinals play out, we've seen the semifinals play out, and then we've seen the World Cup final play out. So, Andrew, give me your thoughts. Let's each take a quarterfinal and a semifinal each and break that down just a little bit, give a brief overview on what we thought about them. Andrew, give me your thoughts. You picked Morocco versus Portugal for the quarterfinal and France versus Morocco for the semifinal. Give me your thoughts on both those games. How do you think they went? What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, it was interesting. So the Morocco versus Portugal quarterfinal was a really interesting one. I think, one of the big narratives was obviously Cristiano Ronaldo, and he did not start the match. He started on the bench, which was very interesting. A lot of people, have been talking about him, his comments in the media regarding his now old club, Manchester United. His second spell ended there on a sour note, and then his behavior has seemingly continued into the world stage as well, openly, disagreeing with his coach and his teammates. So he did start on the bench, which was really interesting because I felt like there was this ongoing discussion throughout the entire World Cup of the GOAT, greatest of all time. Yep. Is it going to be Messi? Is it going to be Ronaldo? And I think Ronaldo flopped and Messi really shone. So, we don't have to go too much into that. But so the match itself was really interesting. Morocco had such a great chemistry. They have a lot of players that at least I hadn't heard about. I mean, the most notable, for me were Hakimi, who plays his football in Paris at PSG, and then Hakim Ziyech, who plays currently at Chelsea, and unfortunately doesn't get a lot of play time. But I would hope after his performance in the World Cup that we really see his stock rise and that he can start at Chelsea, and if not Chelsea, go somewhere where he does. But the game ultimately ended in a 1-0 win for Morocco. An incredible header from, I'm going to mispronounce this, my apologies, but En Nesri, who out-jumped defender and goalkeeper for Portugal to score a beautiful header. So it was a really cohesive, team effort from Morocco. Portugal seemed to be really pressing, but ultimately couldn't find that equalizer in that winner. So hats off to Morocco. It was an incredible run for them. Yeah. So very, very, very excited to see what they do in the future.
Yeah. And then what about the semifinals? So talk a little bit about France versus Morocco. So Morocco goes on and they
do
make the semifinals. Like you said, the first AFCON team ever to make the semifinals of a World Cup versus France. And there's a little bit of history, not just off the pitch with that. And then on
history,
the pitch, this is the first time they're meeting in a semifinal, and I'm sure they're both revved up to go. So tell us a little bit more about this game.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I know that throughout kind of the latter stages of the World Cup, there were some worries about the French team and kind of a flu-like virus going around. I think because it was so hot and they had the AC running, a lot of air circulating, a couple key guys getting sick. So there was a lot of worries about the starting lineup for France. But ultimately, France ended up winning 2-0. Morocco, again, had a really outstanding performance, but the firepower of France was just too strong. We saw in the 5th minute, Theo Hernandez, who I believe plays at AC Milan, he came in for a really acrobatic finish, scored a really outstanding goal, and then we saw Kolo Muani in the 79th minute come off the bench and finish his chance. I think it was almost his first touch that he came in, and if not his first, then one of his first touches. Overall, really outstanding performance from that team. And, we did see Dembele and Giroud get subbed off, at a point in the game. And that was actually a narrative that carried on into the final as well, with them being subbed off even before the first half was done, if I'm right, Harry.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the final in just a bit, but there were whispers or rumors of Giroud, and for those of you listening, and maybe this is after the 2022 World Cup, and Giroud may not be playing for the French national team anymore, but he was the main striker that France depended upon for this World Cup. Scored some amazing headers, goals, etc. But people thought he might have been carrying an injury, and Dembele, for whatever reason, Didier Deschamps subbed him off as well.
Yeah,
because he wanted to bring some other players on for different strategic reasons. But yes, he did pull them off in both games.
Yeah, which was definitely kind of shocking because both players have been big difference makers throughout the World Cup. And, obviously Kylian Mbappe, absolutely outstanding. Mm-hmm. And it was a shame that, even with a hat trick, he couldn't secure the win in the final. But lots to come from him, and very, very excited. And hats off to Antoine Griezmann as well. Yeah. He played an outstanding World Cup. Yeah. So, Harry, do you want to walk us through your picks for the quarter? So I believe you picked Argentina, Netherlands. That was a fiery game, a spicy one.
Oh man! So for those listening that may not be as familiar with the World Cup, there's the term instant classic in sports. So this is translatable across any sports, not just football, not just a sport that you might be thinking about, but when you're watching a game and in your head, oh my goodness, if anyone in the future ever watches this back, they're going to see how good of a game this is. It's an instant classic. It's one that transcends time. You can watch it back and enjoy it in all its glory as much as you did live because it's such a good game. This is one of those games. So Argentina, they put 2 away. So Molina puts 1 away in the 35th minute. Messi gets a penalty and puts 1 away in the 73rd minute, and everyone's thinking, okay, Netherlands, the Dutch are knocked out. They don't have too much of a chance. And then Weghorst, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, maybe butchering it. He's a substitute striker that actually plays for the Dutch, the Netherlands, and he gets subbed on, actually. I think he gets subbed on, I want to say in the second half sometime. They sub, I believe, Luke de Jong and Weghorst on sometime in the second half, or maybe even in the first half. No, it's the second half sometime. And picture this really skinny, tall Dutch guy. And I believe he's 6'6" or something like that. He's just insanely tall.
He's tall. Yeah, tall, lanky guy.
Tall for a football player. And usually you have people between, 5'9", 5'10", all the way until 6'2", 6'3", because when you're tall, it's hard to move your limbs. For those of you that don't know or haven't watched too much of the English Premier League, it's the league based in England. There's this one striker who is also similar in height to Weghorst. His name's Peter Crouch. He's also around the same height, maybe 6'6", 6'5", and he does this celebration called the robot. And that's his famous move, and he looks like the silliest guy doing this crazy celebration with his arms when he scores. But that's a little tangential, little besides the point. But imagine this really tall guy getting subbed on, and he scores 2 goals within 8 minutes. One is the 83rd minute, and one is the 90th minute to tie 2-2. So for the World Cup, you can't have a tie once you pass the group stage. So in the group stage, when you're accruing the points to get first and second in your group, you can't have draws or ties because a draw or tie still gives you 1 point. Once you're in the knockout stage, which is the second stage of the tournament, you have to win or lose the game to go on. So we're in the quarterfinals. It goes to 2-2, and then we go into overtime. So extra time. So past the 90 minutes, there were 10 minutes added. Past the 10 minutes added, we get Weghorst scores in the 100th minute. So I think 90 plus 11. That's when he scores. And then we go to extra time. And then finally we go to penalties. So no one scores in the extra time that's added. So 30 minutes of extra time are added if you draw in just usual regulation time. And then in both halves, no one scores. So in the penalties, we have Virgil van Dijk going first, and this is the center back that plays for Liverpool in England and as well as the Netherlands, and he's the captain of the Dutch team as well. So he's the linchpin. He holds that team together, and he's decided to go first to make sure to set the tone for the Dutch, and then he misses his penalty. So that already starts a downward spiral for the Dutch, and then Lionel Messi goes next as the captain of the Argentina team and scores, and then that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the penalties, and it ends 3-4 with Argentina going through on the penalties. And for those that will watch the match back, so Argentina-Netherlands 2022, you'll notice Emiliano Martinez, he's the goalkeeper playing for Argentina. He is just the most insane goalkeeper for penalties. If there was any goalkeeper I would choose from any team in the world, this would be the guy to block penalties for me. He's got not just skill to predict which way the ball is going, but he's got an insane mentality, and he gets into the heads of his opponents so easily by just doing subtle little movements and little words that I won't throw on this podcast because we are a clean podcast, so I won't dirty the air right now, but you can look up the game and see what he does. But overall, entertaining game, an instant classic, like I said, so definitely look that up. And then for the semifinal, we have Argentina versus Croatia. Unlike the Netherlands game, so Argentina go to the semifinals. Unlike the Netherlands game, this one was definitely just a steamroller by Argentina. They rolled over Croatia. It was 3-0 with Messi scoring a penalty and Julian Alvarez. He plays for Manchester City in the English Premier League. He's a very, very young striker, young talent, and he was not necessarily supposed to be Argentina's number one striker above Lautaro Martinez, but he just found himself in better form and better. He looked a lot better in the tournament and going into the tournament for Argentina, and he scored 2 goals. So him and Messi just combined for a 3-0 against Croatia. And of note in this semifinal, you'll see Alvarez making this crazy run from right before the halfway line all the way to the goal, with him just kicking the ball. And at one point, he actually just kicks it into the shins of 2 or 3 opponents, and it just bounces right back to him, and he keeps running past the players, almost using their shins as a backboard to bounce the ball off of, and just keeps on passing the ball to the player, and the player's like, well, I guess I'll just pass it back to you. And then for the last pass, he passes it into the goal. So amazing goal to witness. And then the last goal by Alvarez, he gets a sublime pass from Messi after Messi makes a spiraling run down the right side of the field, down the touchline, beating the Croatian defender. And it's just a joy to watch. And if you could watch a few matches from the 2022 World Cup, I would definitely recommend watching at least those 2 goals just to get a sense of how the Argentinian team played. So that was the semifinal match that I picked out to go over. And there were 2 other matches that we didn't cover. It was England versus France and Croatia versus Brazil. I'll just talk about who obviously went forward. So France went forward for that match against England, and Croatia actually beat Brazil, I believe, on penalties, and it was a heartbreak for Brazil. They were touted as the strongest team in this World Cup, and Andrew actually picked them to win the whole thing.
I did.
Condolences, Andrew. I'm sorry that your team didn't win the World Cup, but they at least made a decent showing, but definitely not up to the expectations of their nation. But let's go on. So this is the moment we've been waiting for. Our thoughts on the 2022 World Cup final. Let's talk about Argentina versus France. So Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you. What are your thoughts leading up to this game and about this game itself, whether it was the expectations on both sides, Messi versus Mbappe, that was the narrative, the goals, the penalties, were there any controversies? What are your overall thoughts on the game itself?
Yeah, it was an incredible game. As you said earlier, instant classic. It was an instant classic. I can't think of a more riveting game that I've seen in recent history. I mean, it it fully lived up to the hype and perfectly encapsulated the entire World Cup. Going in, we had this, this kind of narrative, right? Is this going to be Leo Messi's? Is this going to be his time? Is he going to lead Argentina to World Cup glory, solidify his name alongside Diego Maradona and other Argentinian, greats or gods, or however you want to put it? And then you have the French team, which, even without a lot of major players that were gone due to injury, things like that, they still found a way to really dominate all the way to the finals. And, you have this guy, Kylian Mbappe, and he and Leo Messi actually play for the same club team. Mm-hmm. So they play their club football in Paris for PSG. I mentioned them earlier with Hakimi. Basically, all you need to know, if you're not too aware, is they're a superstar team.
Yeah.
So a big name team. So you have kind of the new generation versus the old generation. And I had hoped personally that Argentina would win. I wanted to see this narrative, and the game was so interesting because you had Messi creating these big moments, scoring. Yeah. He had multiple goals, and he kept basically putting Argentina in the driver's seat to win the match. Mm-hmm. And then you had Kylian Mbappe, who came and scored absolutely stunning goals. I mean, the kid, he just turned 24. He's got veins with, blood made of ice. He was so cool, so calm, so collected. And it was a real shame to see that even though he had a hat trick and ultimately ended up winning the Golden Boot award, that he did not prevail.
Yeah.
And help them to win. Ultimately, the Argentinian team was just too good. And, the game went to extra time. So it was tied after regulation time. It went to 2 15-minute extra time halves, at which point it was still tied. Mm-hmm. And then it went to penalty kicks, and a couple French players missed kicks. I believe one was blocked and one off the post. Something like that. But anyways, it lived up to the hype, and ultimately Messi got his World Cup win. And I think I even heard some rumblings about Argentina voting to put his face on their money, on their bills.
Oh,
pretty incredible. And if you haven't seen it already, look up clips from the parade.
Yeah.
So, we think of in the Bay Area, we have the Golden State Warriors, and they won the championship last year. And we had, a championship parade in San Francisco, and there was a big showing. But this parade had 4 million people. There's aerial shots of the entire center part of Buenos Aires, the capital, shut down. People on the freeways. At one point, they even had to get the team off the bus and put them in helicopters. Absolute
I didn't
madness.
know that.
So,
wow.
Yeah, so hats off to Argentina. Incredible match. I can't say enough about, the entertainment value. It was worth getting up early. Harry, you even had an earlier start for that game, didn't you?
I did. I woke up around 4:30 a.m. and I was in Hawaii, so I can't complain too much, I would say. But I was in Hawaii for a wedding for a friend, and was up on a Sunday at 4:30 a.m. thinking, okay, this match better be worth it, but it will be worth it because it's every 4 years. And this, not only did it not disappoint, it went beyond my wildest expectations. I think no one was expecting the match that we got. And what I will say is, like you said, Andrew, going into this match, it was Mbappe versus Messi, and this is almost like passing the mantle on, I would say.
It is, yeah. That's a good reference, yeah.
So for those of you listening, getting into the sport, Lionel Messi has been and maybe will be for all time, for the foreseeable future, the greatest of all time to play this sport. A lot of people say Diego Maradona, who's another Argentinian footballer, and Pele, who is a Brazilian footballer as well. They are two incredible legends of the game, and people also call them the greatest of all time. Also, Ronaldo 9, who was Brazilian as well, he's up there. And then also Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo are up there as well. But Messi won everything there is to in his career. And in a moment when Argentina as a team and a nation in the past 8 years have not been the greatest team in the world rankings, haven't looked as good, he's carried them purely on his back, just sometimes out of nothing. Even in this World Cup, in the early stages, in the group stages, he's carried them out of nothing sometimes and just strikes a goal from the edge of the 18 and somehow gets a goal. Again, I think that was a game against Mexico. He just does things out of magic. So that was the narrative going in. Will he truly be the greatest of all time and finally cap his career off with a World Cup, which he's never gotten before? This was his achievement that he's always been waiting for. And Mbappe is this up-and-coming 23-year-old. It was 2 days or 3 days before his birthday, I believe. His birthday was just yesterday on Tuesday. And he was going into this World Cup already having won the last World Cup with France, being 20 years old, I believe, 20 or 19 years old. And he had a point to prove as the undisputed, pretty much best young player in the world, or just even best player in the world, close to Messi, close to Ronaldo, close to all the other greats. And we saw just how much of a force Mbappe was in this game, scoring a hat trick, 2 penalties, and 1 just incredible half volley from a pass from the right side of the pitch. And even a hat trick, like I think you said, Andrew, twice in this podcast, even a hat trick couldn't save France from being defeated in the end on penalties. And it was an entertaining game from start to finish. So I'll recap a few of the events that happened in the game, and then Andrew, if you want to add on to a few things, would love to hear some of your thoughts. So the game started off with a huge amount of momentum on Argentina's side. So they came out strong. We were texting, Andrew and I are in the same group chat, and we were texting furiously. All of us were texting back and forth, and I was saying, and a few of us were saying, that Argentina just looked like they had that hunger, way more hungry than France. And France actually looked physically out of it. It looked visibly like a flu had ravaged the camp. And you could see the back line was a little tired. The midfield especially couldn't keep the ball. They would give the ball away, and Argentina would break and counterattack and counterattack and counterattack. And for those of you learning the sport, when you are tired and when your body can't keep up, football or soccer is one of the most physically demanding sports. And even if you're just at 70% versus 90 or 100%, that can punish you, and you might not be able to catch up to a player that's just whizzing past you. So Lionel Messi puts home the first penalty in the 23rd minute. It was Angel Di Maria that gets brought down. Some people call it a soft penalty, but in the end, there was contact for the penalty, and he gets tripped up inside the box. So Lionel Messi puts the first goal away. And then the second goal comes just 13 minutes later with a beautiful counterattack going from Messi to Julian Alvarez all the way up to Alexis McAllister, I believe. And he pings it across the box from the right to left to Angel Di Maria, who actually hits it into the ground to get it over the keeper's outstretched arms or legs to get that into the goal. So 2-0 up in the 36th minute. So we're all thinking, okay, maybe the game's over, honestly. France look not up for it. Their players don't look like they have the energy. And then, Andrew, you said it earlier, Dembele and Giroud get subbed off in the previous game, yep. And they do now in the 41st minute. And I believe the coach of France, Deschamps, was looking for a little bit more solidity and a little bit more energy, so he brings on 2 younger players in their stead. And then we see in the second half, there's only 1 sub made for Argentina. Acuna is on playing, I believe, left back or on the left side for Argentina, or on one of the sides, and Di Maria comes off. And then you can see 2 more subs on for France. Kingsley Coman coming on for France, and Eduardo Camavinga coming on for France as well, bringing on some energy. And they are playing either in the midfield and the back line, so they provide a lot more stability, a lot more energy around the field. And that's actually when France come to life. So when these 2 subs happen for France in the 71st minute, right away you can see the energy go from just level 2 or maybe out of 5 all the way up to 4 or 5, and they're just sprinting around trying to win the ball back. And you can see right away, 9 minutes later, a penalty is won. Mbappe takes it, slots it home. And then in the 81st minute, I believe there's only 90 seconds between both of those goals. Mbappe scores his second goal of the game with a crazy volley just to put it into the goal. I'd say that was one of the top 5 goals of the tournament. And that brings it to 2-2, and it goes into full time being 2-2. So we go in extra time after that, and Lionel Messi scores an amazing goal in the 108th minute, just from a sequence of passes. It looks like it almost didn't go in, and it looks like the goalkeeper saved it, but it does go in, and the goal line technology calls it, and it's in. And we think the game's won by then. Who scores in the second half of extra time? Nobody, right? No one would ever predict anyone scoring, but Mbappe, France win a penalty, and then Mbappe takes the penalty in the 118th minute before the 120-minute whistle is blown, and then it goes to penalties. And then, unfortunately, France fall in penalties. Again, we talk about Emiliano Martinez, the goalkeeper for Argentina. He's just a wizard at saving penalties, and this was no different. He saved, I believe, Coman's penalty, and Tchouameni, like you said, I believe hits the post or just goes wide, and those were the 2 French players that missed or did not hit the back of the net for the French team, leading to a 4-2 win for Argentina in penalties. So overall, the game was just insane. This was perhaps the greatest World Cup game of all time, just in terms, World Cup final game of all time, in terms of the circumstances, context, what Messi was hoping for, and overall just a great game from start to finish. Yeah, and Andrew, let's turn it over to you for just any awards or stats or any other thoughts about the game.
Yeah, the game was incredible from start to finish, and I think it's worth noting that the Argentinian head coach, Scaloni, I believe is his name, made a lot of like really interesting tactical moves. So starting Angel Di Maria was an interesting move because he had not really gotten a lot of play time throughout the tournament, even though he's a veteran, and he ends up setting up a lot of wonderful plays, scoring a goal, and he brings on some substitutes towards the end when they think they're going to go to penalty kicks. Dybala, Lautaro Martinez, those guys end up converting. Really incredibly well played game, but also really well managed as well. I think it's worth noting as well that the referee was fantastic. And, we don't often say that about referees, but I feel like he got every call spot on. And Harry, I know you sent me a video about just the prep that he does. It's very intensive, isn't it?
Yeah, so intensive. So this referee's name, he was from Poland. It was funny. When one of his interviews, he said, or an interviewer asked him, if Poland never go to the World Cup, do you think you'll go to the World Cup before Poland does, to a World Cup final? He said, yep, one day I'm going to absolutely referee a World Cup final. And he ended up refereeing the World Cup final for 2022. His name is, I believe it's either Szymon or Simon. It's Szymon, but it looks like a Simon. Marciniak, he's Polish. And just the amount of prep he does with his team, so not just himself, but his linesmen, the VAR staff, etc., just they have so much trust in him as the head referee. So he's the one. You can listen to our pod on the basic rules and regulations of football. That's, I believe, a couple pods ago. But we talk about referees and the significance they have on the game of football. But he's the one running in the middle, and he's the one that always blows the whistle first, calling a foul or a call or any kind of penalty. And I think a notable one was when he called a yellow card. I believe it was on Thuram. I think that's his name. So this was a French player that went down in the penalty area or the goalkeeper's box in the Argentinian area looking for a penalty call. So on even the first replay on the camera, it had looked like Marcus Thuram was tripped by an Argentinian player, and it looked like France had gotten a penalty kick. And we were like, wow, like he didn't call it. What's going on? this ref can't see anything. But if you replay it again, you can see that Thuram actually drags his foot while he's running, and he actually makes it look like he was being tripped by the Argentinian player by using the pretty much the laces of his boot and dragging them on the floor to look like he's almost like this ballerina style fall onto the ground. And the ref spotted it right away, and he was looking right at his feet. And within a split second, 2-3 seconds, he not only does not call the penalty, but he actually gives Thuram a yellow card for simulation. And this is so rare. So, Andrew, we were talking about fouls and when you get yellow cards and when you get booked and things like that. For a referee in the World Cup final to penalize someone for diving, for simulating a foul and faking something, how ballsy is that? How outrageously confident do you have to be in your own abilities to do that?
Super confident. Yeah, and it shows his prep and his just knowledge of the game, and it was really incredible.
Yeah. So overall, great refereeing. I would say I'm so glad he was the ref in the final. He did get a 2 out of 10 by the French newspaper L'Equipe. I'm not sure how to say their name, but I think they were very salty just about him not calling that penalty. But it was clearly a dive. When you replay it was definitely a dive. So overall, the World Cup final was incredible. We see the ceremony. Messi gets crowned as pretty much the king of football, and the Argentinian team get all the accolades. Andrew, let's talk a little bit about the accolades of the World Cup. So in our last podcast, we went over the predictions of who would win, who would get the runners-up prize and things like that. And we also talked about the different awards of the World Cup in our first podcast about the World Cup. So talk to the listener a little bit about the different awards given to the players right after the World Cup final finished.
Yeah, definitely. So it's interesting because when we think about how many goals were scored, how many goals do you think were scored in this World Cup?
Ooh.
Before I let the listeners know.
So I think I want to say there's 96 games. Maybe I'm overestimating that. I'm gonna guess like 110 goals.
172.
Oh my goodness, 172 goals?
Yeah,
Jeez.
It was the highest scoring. It's an all-time competition record, surpassing the 171 scored in both the 1998 and 2014 World Cups.
Jeez, wow.
So absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So when we think about goals scored, so the Golden Boot, so that goes to the player that ultimately scores the most goals, and so that went to Kylian Mbappe. He had 8 goals throughout the tournament, which puts him pretty close to all-time leader.
Yep.
All-time record is held by Germany's Miroslav Klose, who scored 16 goals over four World Cups. So I think Kylian Mbappe is well on his way at the ripe age of 24. Oh, yeah. So he scores the most goals. The Golden Ball, so best player of the tournament, has to go to Leo Messi.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer there.
Yeah.
He had an absolutely incredible World Cup. The Golden Glove, so best goalkeeper, goes to Emi Martinez, the Argentinian madman.
Yeah.
There is a funny meme out there. I won't talk about it too much, but look it up on Twitter. The guy is an absolute... I don't know, character? I don't know what to call him.
He's a lot of things that we can't say on this podcast, but let's just put it that way. Long after he's retired, his accolades and his just actions will live on. Let's just say that.
They will. And the Young Player Award goes to Enzo Fernandez, Argentinian player, who also plays his club football at Benfica in Portugal.
Yep.
So... really, really impressive. I think all of the awards were well-deserved and went to the best candidates. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Andrew, soaking in the final and kind of our last thoughts on the final.
Yeah.
This was just an incredible performance, incredible entertainment, and this is what makes the World Cup worth watching and worth watching at any time.
Oh, yeah.
Time of the day. I mean, I think I want to just give a shout out to Argentina. I think going through the World Cup, coming in obviously on a hot streak, not losing in 26 games, but to lose against Saudi Arabia for the first game and to get that mentality back and to pull through in the end, just credit goes to where credit's due. Argentina, the World Cup champions of 2022, the deserved winners, just what an incredible feat. Andrew, any last thoughts before we preview the next World Cup?
Oh man, I'm still buzzing. I mean, it's kind of crazy because we were talking before we started recording about club season now picking up. And it feels like we've just been in this, I don't know, heavenly oasis
dream state.
Wonderful dream state of wonderful football. So for those of you listening in, European football will pick back up again. MLS runs on a different schedule, so they're not up and running yet. But European football will presume. For the English Premier League, it starts December 26th, which is Boxing Day, and a certain co-host's birthday as well. So, yeah, I'm very excited. So, yeah, ultimately, wonderful World Cup, amazing watch, and I cannot wait for 2026.
Ooh, okay. So we're going to do the quickest preview on this because I know we have to wind our episode down. And we've gotten a little excited and talked a lot about this past 2022 World Cup, but
we have.
Let's talk a little bit about where this 2026 World Cup is going to be. So in 4 years, the World Cup will kick back up again, most presumably in the summer this time, the proper schedule. It's going to be a summer World Cup, so the players actually have a little bit of time to prep for it. Andrew, tell the listener where the World Cup will be located. Is it one location, multiple locations? How do the viewers travel around? Where is it going to be located?
Yeah, so this World Cup will be a North American-centric World Cup. So the host countries, so it'll be split across 3 countries. That's Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Wow. So there's a great resource online through FIFA, but running through it, we've got host cities of Toronto, Vancouver, Guadalajara, Mexico City, Monterrey.
Wow.
We've got Atlanta, Boston, Kansas City, Houston, Dallas, LA, Miami, New York, Seattle, Philadelphia, and lest we not forget San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
We've got to get our names on some sort of wait list or raffle for that. Lottery, I should say.
Yeah.
So it'll be split across all those different cities. If you're listening in North America, definitely try to get to see a game. It's not so often that the World Cup comes around. I know it came, I forget World Cup, but I know my dad was pretty young when it came to the States, and they played at Stanford Stadium, and the Brazil team played in my hometown, or stayed in my hometown. And so anyways, very, very excited. It's coming to the States, to Mexico, and to Canada. Harry, how are you feeling about that?
I'm feeling really buzzed and excited. I think going back to the U.S. men's national team, when we had Tim Rollinson just going over the state of the team, in 4 years, a lot can happen. So we're seeing the U.S. men's national team this year have a little bit of cohesion, especially in the midfield. They were a powerhouse in midfield. They outpaced, outmuscled, just their mentality was so strong there. But for an attacking force, the U.S. are just not there yet. And the defense could shore up just a little bit better. We saw a 3-1 defeat against, who did we play? Netherlands in the knockouts. Yeah. And so there's a little bit ways to go, but I'm just excited that as the team grows, which we'll see the team just get better. They're a young team. We're going to see the U.S. host an amazing World Cup across just some outstanding cities across the U.S. and, of course, Canada and Mexico. And I can't wait to travel. So, Andrew, I'm hoping in 4 years, I'm sure things will change, but our passion for football will not change. And I, for one, am going to book hopefully maybe a month or more of blocked time and just travel around the U.S. and maybe go to some cities I've never been to and try to catch some World Cup games. So we're going to get that in the books, but it is significant because the U.S. is just an up-and-coming nation. I think this is going to spark just so much more passion. And if we are, which hopefully we will be doing the podcast still around that time, we're going to get some live interviews at the World Cup, not just for the World Cup, but at the World Cup when that happens. So let's get the closing thoughts in for the 2022 World Cup. Andrew, what are your closing thoughts? How are you feeling right now? Just give the listener a little piece of what you're chewing on.
It was an incredible World Cup. I think, the timing of what we talked about, we didn't plan it. Obviously, we can't plan the outcomes of matches, but it felt like everything we were talking about and discussing with friends and other fans, it just was so relevant. We saw, we saw it all. We saw handballs. We saw offsides. Yeah. We saw, goals. It was incredible. And I think it really, especially for first-time fans, it really showed the full spectrum of the game. I can't tell you how many people I had coming up to me, talking to me about the games that I didn't even know were fans, and that was incredible to see. And I think that's the power of the game. And so hopefully if you're listening to this and you're a first-time fan, maybe the World Cup is what got you going, I hope that you can continue to nourish that passion, start watching games, hopefully regularly tune in to our podcast and get some more fun bites. But it's a beautiful game, and I think it was fully on display. Harry, how about you? Close us out.
Yeah, I think, Andrew, just to keep it simple, it's a beautiful game. I'm going to echo exactly what you said. The beauty of the game was represented in full, in its entirety across this World Cup. And if you could just watch a few matches back, I would definitely recommend watching most of Argentina's, at least from the knockouts on, and then watch a few of the games, the underdog games, South Korea, and a few other teams coming. Japan, I believe, is in there, just beating some significant teams as well along the way. Yeah. And just the beauty of the game is just the investment and time and energy and the passion, the emotion that the fans put in as well. And you can see that in full force come out in this World Cup. And it was just a pleasure and an honor to have witnessed some of the moments that we did across the World Cup. Yeah, so really exciting times. So up next, we actually have a little bit of a holiday break. So this podcast is out December 22nd, which is 3 days before the holiday and Christmas break. So we are going to be taking about a 3 to 4 week holiday break for now. So if you're tuning in when this podcast comes out, just know that we'll be coming back sooner than later, but we will have a little bit of a break just to spend time with friends and family and just to wind down a little bit for the season before picking back up with your favorite topics. In the meanwhile, we're going to still stay active on our socials, so definitely follow us on Instagram, definitely follow us on Twitter. If you have either of those, we have a website as well, and all of our resources can be found on any three of those social media or outlets. But that was today's episode of the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry, and we will see you soon. If you have any topics that you'd want to talk about, please write in to the supersubspod@gmail.com. We will field any of your questions, any of your thoughts, or just say hi, have a beverage or beer suggestion, and we will drink it if we can find it in our local stores, and we'll shout you out. But subbing out for now, this was the Super Subs. Catch you on the next one.